Namaste and hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel Hamsavahini Vajraasthra. I'm Awhona. In today's video, I'm going to share some books which I would recommend for part 2 of the Nightingale August Challenge Readathon 2021. Now, the Nightingale August Challenge Readathon is a month-long readathon which would be running during the entirety of August on this particular channel, and the announcement video to this particular readathon is given in the description box below. Also, the book recommendations for the participation requirements for this challenge is also given in another link in the description box below. So in this video, I'm going to recommend books for part 2 of this particular readathon, which is absolutely optional, and there is no hard and fast rule that you need to attempt any of the challenges. In case if you are interested in exploring a bit about the Victorian medical history, or if you do find any of the challenges interesting, or if you wish, you can double up or triple up on the prompts. It's absolutely up to you. You definitely can attempt any of the challenges. So let's get down to the book recommendations, and do join me further in this video. So those were the challenges for the history section. Now we'll come down to the real life experience section. So challenge number 4 is to read a book about the contributions or experiences of a modern day nurse. So I do have a few book recommendations for you over here. So the first book that I would recommend is called Critical Care: A New Nurse Faces Death, Life and Everything in Between by Theresa Brown. So from the back of the book, it reads as: in her former career as an English professor, Theresa Brown has been shielded from the harsh reality of death. That all changed the day she decided to become an oncology nurse. In Critical Care, Theresa writes powerfully and honestly about her first year on the hospital floor. With great compassion and a disarming sense of humor, she shares the trials and the triumphs of her patients, and comes to realize that caring for a patient means much more than simply treating a disease. Deeply moving and at times sobering, Critical Care sheds light on the issues of mortality and meaning in our lives. So that will be the first book that I would recommend. Now, the next book that I would recommend is a hilarious book which is called Confessions of a Male Nurse, written by Michael Alexander. So this is actually hilarious, and from the back of the book it reads as: From stampeding nudes to inebriated teenagers, Michael Alexander never knew what he was getting himself into. But now, 16 years since he first launched into his nursing career, as the only man in a gynecology ward, he's pretty much dealt with everything. Body parts that come off in his hands, teenagers with phantom pregnancies, doctors unable to tell the difference between their left and right, violent drunks, singing relatives, and more nudity than the sex industry. So this is a hilarious book. I read another book by by this particular author, which was absolutely hilarious as well. So that's one of the books that I would recommend. The second book that I would recommend is called Confessions of a School Nurse by the same author, Michael Alexander. And I did read this last year and it was absolutely hilarious. So from the back of the book, it reads as, ever wondered what goes on behind boarding school's gates? When nurse Michael Alexander traded in his hospital uniform for the fresh air, comfort and routine of a boarding school in the Alps, he thought his days of stress and craziness was behind him, but it wasn't long before he discovered the school nursing is not all permission slips. I'm sorry, I'll just read that once again. But it wasn't long before he discovered that school nursing is not all about permission slips, sniffles and gift baskets, disastrous school trips, illicit sleepovers, awkward sex education classes, swine flu hysteria, and kids with six-figure bank balance with a taste for bribery. This is nursing as you've never seen it before. Now, this book is absolutely hilarious, and I would highly recommend this book and this other book which has been written by the same author. So that's Michael Alexander. Now, the fourth book that I would recommend for this particular challenge is by Barbara Mortimer, which is called Sisters, the Heroic True Life Stories from the Nurses of World War II. I just hope you can see it. And from the back of the book, it reads as, on 3rd September 1939, the Prime Minister declared that Britain was at war with Nazi Germany. Thousands of young women, many of them barely out of school, were sent headlong into grueling training regimes that would see them become wartime nurses. Sisters features over 150 previously unpublished accounts from the archives of the Royal College of Nursing. The vivid, poignant and riveting stories captures these nurses' incredible bravery and touching friendships. So the back cover is also quite beautiful. It has the picture of these nurses. And this is the book. So that will be the fourth book which I would recommend. Now the fifth book which I would recommend is called Bedpans and Bobby Socks, which has been written by Barbara Fox and Gwenda Gofton. It's about 5 British nurses on the American road trip of a lifetime. So from the back of the book, okay, this is the book. And from the back of the book, it reads as, Gwenda has always longed for adventure, but nursing in 1950s Newcastle didn't exactly provide the thrills that she was looking for. So, with best friend and fellow nurse Pat in tow, she left the dismal British winter behind and embarked upon an incredible American road trip. Driving thousands of miles across the country in a battered and temperamental Ford, and with 3 new friends along for the ride, the girls shared many memorable moments getting to grips with the American-style nursing, sleeping under the stars in the bare-filled wilderness, rubbing shoulders with movie stars, and even drinking tea at gunpoint. The charming true story of 5 remarkable young women, this is a delightfully nostalgic memoir of friendship and romance of the open road. So this is the 5th book that I would recommend. Yeah, this is the 5th book. Now, the 6th book that I would recommend is called Sisters in Arms. British Army nurses tell their story, and it's been written by Nicola Tyler. So, from the back of the book, it reads as, the story of the QAs is so much more than blood and bandages. It abounds with incredibly moving heroic acts. The QAs were often young, sheltered, middle-class girls who suddenly found themselves thrust under into the theatre of war. Nothing in their backgrounds could have helped them for the unimaginably harsh conditions they were to encounter. They were raped, starved, shot at, and shipwrecked. They tended the horrific burns of the Battle of Britain pilots, and they were the first women to enter the liberated Nazi death camps. Meanwhile, on the home front, they tended the victims of the Blitz. Coping in an emergency and not showing fear was what these women were trained to do, and they vividly recounted their deeds with modesty and understatement. So this is the 6th book that I would recommend. Now, the 7th book that I would recommend is called No Time for Romance by Lucilla Andrews, and this is an inspirational story, true story of a nurse in wartime. So from the back of the book it reads as, Lucilla Andrews was only 18 when, as a volunteer nurse at the beginning of the Second World War, she experienced the grim realities of wartime. Young, inexperienced, and coming from a comfortable, sheltered background, she found herself dealing with survivors from Dunkirk and victims of Blitz. Seeing these horrors at first hand had a profound and lasting effect upon her and made her determined to train as a nurse at St. Thomas's Hospital. No Time for Romance is a story, the powerful and moving account of a young girl in wartime London, learning the hard way about medicines, injuries and death, as well as love and hope. It is a story of both personal courage and of the courage of the British people at war. So that's the book that I would recommend. Now there are a few other books which I did come across as well. So now let's come down to the 5th challenge, which is to read a book about paramedics and their real life experiences. Now this is one of the books that I had read last year, which is called Fighting for Your Life, a Paramedic Story by Lisa Walder. And from the back of the book it reads as, a teenage boy lies on the pavement, bleeding from a stab wound. A distraught mum watches in mute shock as her daughter suffers a terrifying fatal asthma attack. A young girl is gang raped and a stricken boyfriend takes an overdose. A disturbed young man flings himself in front of a speeding train at the stroke of midnight on the New Year's Eve. Few people can imagine living in a world where such situations are part of everyday life. Yet for veteran paramedic Lisa Walder, these and thousands of other emergency call-outs are part of a day's work, scenes of tragedy, heroism and loss and horror, but also stories of triumph and humor. Lisa has been a paramedic for over 20 years, working for London Ambulance Service, the world's biggest and busiest free service for much of that time. Here she reveals what it's really like to work in a job that brings paramedic teams face to face with death and destiny every day. So that's the first book that I would recommend, and this is actually a very good book, and I did read this last year for the NightingaleAugustChallenge 2020, and I really found this very interesting and very touching. So that's the first book that I would recommend. There are other books that I would like to recommend as well. Now, challenge number 6 of the real life experience section is to read a book about the real life paranormal encounters at a hospital. So the first recommendation that I would like to make is called Ghosts of the NHS and the Other Spirits I Have Known by Glynis Amy Allen. And from the back of the book, it reads as, Ghosts of the NHS and Other Spirits I've Known. It is rare to find an account of mediumship and communication with the spirit world that is told in such a wonderfully down-to-earth way. Glynis Allen gives us an extraordinary story after another, yet with detailed authenticity, humor, and genuine compassion. This is the narrative of a spiritual life, especially while working as a senior hospital nurse in the National Health Service for 30 years. You will read the accounts of the ghosts of the spirits she encountered, such as seeing the soul leaving the body and meeting the guardian spirits of those who were suffering. She was often able to pass on comforting evidence of survival to relatives. It is a remarkable book, the truth of which is very hard to deny, and it raises important questions about the nature of human consciousness for us all. So that is the first book that I would recommend. Now, there are other books which I would like to recommend as well, so do please watch along. So those would be the two sections for which I did have book recommendation. Now the last section is called the fiction section, in which challenge number 7 is to read any fiction about nurses, and challenge number 8 is to read about any medical horror fiction or fiction about haunted hospitals. So I will not be recommending books for this because it's a wide array of books which are available for these two challenges. So I would leave it completely up to you. You can either double up or triple up prompts in a single book if you would like, but for example, in the participation section, the second challenge is to read a nursing fiction book, which can be doubled up with challenge number 7, and challenge number 8 is of course about reading a medical horror fiction. So it's one of the challenges which cannot be doubled up or with any other challenge. But yes, it's a fun challenge, and you can definitely read from any classic, or you can read any medical horror and crime fiction. You could also read about forensic nursing, which was probably written in the earlier years during the 1960s, 1970s. That was very popular, so you can definitely read any fiction on them. So I would leave it completely up to you. So those were the 8 challenges and the book recommendations. So that's all I have for today, and do please let me know if you did find this video interesting, and also if you would like to participate in the Nightingale August Challenge, and the details of course are listed in the description box below. And with that, I will be wrapping up this video, so I will see you soon in another video. So till then, take care, have a good reading week ahead, and namaste.